Right, so Robert McCleary, thank you very much for giving me your time. I've been looking forward to having a conversation with you. I think we've been a couple of weeks in the making, so greetings to you, sir.
It's good to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Ah, it's my pleasure. It's my pleasure. I wanted to invite you on for a couple of reasons, really. In fact, I won't tell your journey, your story. I'll allow you to introduce yourself if you don't mind, and kind of give people that are watching a bit of an insight as to who you are.
Okay. So right now I am a director of reliability engineering at Filevine. I'm also a director of platform engineering. I'm probably doing a little too much, but that's the way things
Startup,
are
right?
sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, I actually have a degree in social geography. That's where my undergraduate education took me, and it took me there because I believe wholeheartedly that an undergraduate degree should be as broad as you can possibly make it. And geography definitely hit that. There was hard science, there was soft science, there was computer science. It was all in there. Um, the next step out of college was actually into a company called Schneider Electric. I was working on their geographic information systems. Started off in sales, did some software engineering for a little bit, did some delivery work for them. And during that entire process, I learned about DevOps and the idea of automating away toil. And I really got excited about that. I really got excited. Um, and so in the process of that excitement, I learned how to take a process that took us about 3 months to deliver for a customer down to about 3 weeks. And I was so proud of it. I was like, yes, I've got this. They're going to love it. Uh, Turns out we were charging by the hour.
Oh, yeah. Oh dear,
And
that
so
didn't go down
so
well then.
I yeah, I completely gutted any chance of making a profit there. And so it wasn't accepted. We didn't use my new process. We didn't take advantage of all of that sweet automation. And that's what had me looking for somewhere else to go.
Yeah.
I landed at a startup called Newton Software that was eventually bought by another startup called Paycor. And I focused entirely on the DevOps way of doing things at first. And then I took over more of the traditional operations role, which is when I learned about SRE, and I started focusing on trying to improve the system from an observability and a scalability standpoint so that very little effort was required by the engineers themselves to keep things scaling and keep things running. I came to Fileline, my current employer, as a DevSecOps engineer, software engineer that focused on DevSecOps, I should
Right.
say. And
Yeah.
then uh, after a little bit of rigmarole, I ended up being offered a position on the executive team in technology, and I took it, and that's where I've been since. I think that was like 6 months into my time at Fileline. So
Right. So you were always destined for a startup, it sounds. You kind of had that spirit about you.
I definitely think it fits my personality best.
Yeah,
So
yeah. What do you think was the hardest transition? You know, a lot of people, I mean, obviously a recruiter, and more often than not, people say to me, I don't want somebody from a big company, we're a startup, they typically won't make it, and they'll dismiss it based on CV alone. Um, I'm going to suppose two questions here. I'm going to load this question up, layer it twice. What would you say to those people who perhaps will dismiss a CV because they've got a Schneider Electric on it and won't give somebody a startup opportunity? And what what did you take away from working the large company into the startup that you think would be useful to talk about?
yeah, so I what I would tell the people who will dismiss a CV that's coming from a large company like Schneider is that you need to look at um, the person's attitude more than what their company was. Like a lot of people are dissatisfied. The large companies are slow to move. That was the one of the biggest problems I had with Schneider Electric. Uber successful, but between me and the top of the company, I think I counted 37 levels of management.
Bloody hell.
37. And so anything that I wanted to get done had 3 to 10 different approvals to get it done. And that made it completely untenable to move at any kind of real speed to see in human life terms the effect that you were having, right? So I'd say give them a chance, because just because they worked for a big corporation doesn't mean they are big corporate at heart, right?
Yeah.
That may not be what they love.
Yeah.
As far as what I brought with me from Schneider Electric, I brought with me an understanding of how a mature organization functions. Like almost every corporation, so I've only been part of 3 startups, right?
Mm.
Each of those startups wants to become what Schneider is eventually. Like they all have this grand and glorious dominate the world plan,
Mm.
and they're going to be everywhere someday, right?
Yeah.
And when you expand like that, the easiest way to manage it is that overly heavy hierarchical style. And so I brought in knowing what an in state would look like. And so I was able to work very quickly and very efficiently in bringing up the great bits of value that I could provide to this company, all knowing that it had to eventually fit into this bigger picture down the road. So that's very helpful. As an aside, I don't think that every startup has to turn into that. Like, I think that we could start making decisions where we don't try to globally dominate and take over every market possible, but still make the best product that we possibly can, and make insane money doing it. Like
Yep.
if we focus more and stop trying to be just like all the other big companies, I think there's a whole niche of opportunity out there that could allow that. So
I suppose that's what's happening in that DevOps space and what's had happened over the course of time. There's been so many companies that have come in and they've offered something very, very particular that one of the larger organizations couldn't move quickly enough to innovate. And they've kind of done a very good job in doing so and just staying around a certain size and being obviously very profitable. And there's obviously no harm in doing that. And I guess you've been part of the DevOps journey, from what sounds, since what it was in there for you to where it is now. You know, what have you seen? You know, what have you witnessed? What are your key takeaways from where the DevOps market was? I know DevOps isn't a market per se, but where it was and perhaps where it is now.
I think that where it was very tool centric, and it multiplied in that way. Like most of the companies, they still don't understand what the heart of DevOps is, which is continuous improvement, right? That's the heart of DevOps. Working together as a holistic organization to improve your reliability, to improve your deliverables, to make sure that everything about what you do, right down to your profits, are increasing at a steady pace that you can continue to grow without continuing to exert an outsized amount of input to get that growth, right?
Mm.
Um, and and so I think the market still hasn't caught hold of the vision. They don't understand what they're getting, what the possibilities are. Let me rephrase that.
Mm.
And because of that, they focus on, oh, if I only buy this tool, I will have DevOps and all the benefits that come from it.
Yeah.
And okay, yeah, you get the benefits of DevOps that tool provides,
Yeah.
but that's not the benefit of DevOps. So
Yeah, and it never stops evolving either. I mean, the iterations that I see and the new tools that come to market to completely not revolutionize the DevOps space or the methodology of DevOps, but like, you know, the introduction of Kubernetes. I was talking to a chap called Brian Ross from Tanzu, if you know Tanzu products, yesterday. Very Kubernetes centric and very complicated. You know, people are scrambling to understand it and figure out how to scale that in kind of a cloud native environment. And it's brought me to a lot of different kind of roles that I've seen. And then this is one of the things that I was going to ask you, because over the course of the number of years that I suppose you've been in this DevOps world, I mean, how many role titles have you seen? There's SRE, there's platform engineer, there's DevOps engineer, there's all of these different role titles. And I see you're now director of reliability engineering. Prior to that, platform architecture. Are there really big nuances in between, SRE and platform engineering, or are they kind of similar? Just, some people might not actually understand the difference between the two, or if there
Yeah,
are any.
so the main difference between the two is who your customers are. When you're working in the platform engineering space, your customers are the developers inside of your organization. You're helping them reduce pain points, improve their efficiency, decrease the number of bugs that come through. You're making their lives as nice as possible. And even the intersection between platform engineering and SRE is that cloud native architecture, right? Building out the Kubernetes platform that all a developer has to do is include the right YAML file in the right place, and the CI pipeline packages it and throws it in a container for them, and they don't have to think about it anymore, right? That's where the platform space ends, and the SRE side of things is focusing on how to take care of scalability, reliability, performance, disaster recovery, and cost efficiency, so that you're providing the best possible service to your clients. Or let me rephrase that. You're providing an acceptable level of service to your clients. And depending on who they are, it's different. And you're doing it in a very methodical way. And you're thinking about it as a software engineer rather than a traditional sysadmin. So a normal sysadmin, they're running a service. It is in their best interest to put whatever possible blocks you can on the software developers from changing the system, because a static system runs much easier than a constantly changing one. So SRE takes on that entire DevOps model where you want to improve the speed and velocity of the rest of your software engineers, but they go one step further and they say, hey, software problems, operations problems are software problems, and I'm going to start building pieces of software to address those problems.
Okay.
And so their products are things that clients never see, but without them, you would never be able to reach the scale or reliability standards that those customers expect.
And are both of those roles inward facing, or would an SRE deal with the customers and go inward facing as well?
So the SRE is, how do I put it? In the SRE is worried about the customer experience. So SLIs, service level indicators, are metrics that you can use to monitor your system to determine whether or not your system is behaving in a way that's going to make your customers happy, right? And so from that perspective, it's absolutely external. But from the other perspective, is SRE is negotiating with all the internal pieces of an organization to make sure that you can provide that level of experience for your clients. And so there's both. But like I said, with the platform, most of the time your experience ends with making sure you've taken care of your developers.
And let's talk about your product then with Fileline. I mean, what problem is that solving, and is that product in its development, requiring of SREs and platform engineers and dev engineers? I'm thinking about how the structure of an organization like yours fits together.
Okay, yeah. So Fileline's actually interesting in that it's a consumer facing product. It is a workflow management tool for the legal profession. And so it keeps track of your documents, your court dates, your intercommunication between you, opposing counsel, or you and the other members of your legal team as you're preparing something to go to court to defend a case or to make a point, right? And so from that perspective, the the Filevine customer really has an immense need for durability. Durability has to be there, right? When they say that they've got a piece of evidence, they have to be able to retrieve that evidence, period. And we're still trying to find out exactly where the reliability, like the amount of uptime for any part of our service really needs to be. But it's I can tell you based on customer sentiment over the last couple of years, it's pretty dang high. I and so it's going to be interesting to work to define exactly what level we're going to provide,
Mm.
and to make the investments necessary to make sure we meet that level of expectation.
Nice.
So SRE from that perspective is entirely is the group that is constantly focused on incrementally improving things such that we don't have to hire a million more engineers to keep things running as we scale. So when I came to Filevine, we were at our peaks, we were at about 20,000 requests per minute. It's not bad. It's not huge.
Yeah.
Today we're at about 120,000 3 years later. If our pipeline of new customers continues at the pace that it has, we'll probably be in the 3 to 500,000 range in 2 years.
Wow.
Like it just goes and goes and goes. And so SRE is constantly thinking about, well, what do we have to do to the system now so that we can reach that next level? And then what do we have to start getting moving now so that we'll be ready to make the level after that?
It seems that there's a lot more people making lawsuits against one another. Suits you
there
guys.
there is I don't think that the legal profession has downturns.
No. Compensation culture, I think, is at its peak, if anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I found interesting about you in in doing a bit of preparation ahead of us talking, two things actually. One was your your advocating of mental health and promoting the importance of creating a work-life balance, which I think is probably prevalent at the moment. I think a lot of people are focusing a lot on that, having spent so much time working at home. I mean, if you don't mind talking to me a little bit about your journey, what led you to write your recent article, Find Your Balance, which I'll post a link to in this feed. But
Yeah.
if you don't mind, yeah, just give us a little bit of an insight into why you feel that's so important to you.
Sure. So just in general, during my time at Schneider Electric, I actually ended up burning out. And a lot of people are like, "Oh, it's all the company's fault. They should have done something to prevent it." Blah blah blah. Honestly, there were times where the expectations put upon me were unreasonable, but they weren't malicious. They weren't trying to abuse me. They weren't trying to do anything but do what was best for the entire company, right? They were trying to move things forward.
Yeah.
And at the time, I thought everything that was handed to me just had to get done. And so I did everything I possibly could. And the more I did, the more there was to do. It turns out that's the nature of business. If you do something, you probably have created more work for yourself anyways, right?
If you do it
And
well, yeah.
so over the years after recovering, I've developed several key things that I do in order to keep myself balanced, prevent myself from going back to that. Fast forward to now, a lot of changes happening at Filevine. Like I said, we're progressing really fast, and it's very exciting. But in the process, like I've had 2 changes in management above me in the last 9 months, and I have fallen back into that trap of trying to take everything that's given to me and run with it. And so that article that I wrote is more or less was me reevaluating and saying, hey, it doesn't have to be this way. You can make it better, and these are the things that will help.
Yeah, almost like you're writing to yourself.
Exactly, and that's how I put it. It's an open letter to me
Mm.
These are things that I know I need to do.
Yeah.
And honestly, since I wrote it, I've already begun improving things. So
Yeah.
like sometimes you do just have to remind yourself, okay, this is what I've got to do to make things the way I want them. So
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I some years ago had a similar circumstance where my mental health capitulated and I completely fell to pieces, a complete nervous breakdown. And one of the things that I did in my recovery was to journal and to write things down that were working for me and working against me. And I ended up with a book. I ended up writing a book that got published. And not so long ago, because this is my second startup and this is with my own money, so the level of stress in doing so has been pretty high. And I went for a bit of a period where I was finding it difficult, to say the least. And someone said to me, I know a good book you can read. And
and it was your
yeah,
book.
it was my book. And I was like, yeah, understood. So I went back and read it and I put the things back in practice, much like you're saying there. Um, to it's a challenging time for a lot of people at the moment. There's a lot of uncertainty in some people's jobs. People are losing jobs in tech organizations. We're seeing a lot of kind of not very nice percentages of companies' workforce being laid off. So I think if we were both to give a message to somebody that is going through a difficult time, that is struggling with that, what would your kind of advice to those people be?
My base advice is yeah, the most basic, do the basics. Get
Yeah.
yourself, make sure you're getting sleep. That can be hard when you're under a lot of pressure, but
Mm.
combine it with exercise, combine it with meditation, do whatever you can to manage that stress in the
Yeah.
short term so you can take care of your physical needs. When your physical needs are met,
Mm.
your mental capacity increases, your ability to handle bigger, more difficult problems increases. And so that's where you start.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I at first struggled with was meditation. I really struggled to kind of find the concept that worked for me. And I tried loads of different things. I don't know what worked for you, but I ended up finding Tibetan singing bowls that used to play into my ears, and that was it for me. It worked, and I got to a point where I got that good at meditation. I had an out of body experience, which I don't know if you've experienced that. It was
I'm not.
mental. It was absolutely mental. Um, but I think meditation for me is something that you have to practice and try different methods of. So if anybody does try that and gives up, first of all, try some different methods. There's a lot of different ways of practicing that. But I think it's certainly a good message in find your balance. And again, I'll put the link to what you've written out there, and I'm sure you'll have some people reach out to you and ask for your support and advice. As I'm sure you won't mind doing.
I definitely won't. I'd be happy to talk to anybody who's facing similar things or knows someone who they'd like to help and
Yeah.
could use some advice. So I'm glad to do
Yeah.
that.
So what do you think's next for you then, Robert? Where are you thinking is this journey going to lead now? You've got 3 years at Farvine. You're building something quite spectacular by the sounds of it. You've got a big task ahead of you. What do you think's coming next?
So at Filevine, I think the next big thing is actually doubling down on our ability to observe the everything that's going on. The platform is ginormous. We've got like this may sound a joke to somebody from Google, but for me, this is huge, right? Like we've got something like 18 individual services split out across 16 different shards, um, literally literally 5 to 10,000 total systems running simultaneously across the AWS cloud, right? Um, Getting to the point where we can accurately understand in a single look the health of the total system. I think that's the next step for Filevine. And the step just beyond that is defining what the appropriate service level objective needs to be for providing our services to our clients, and then holding the entire engineering organization accountable to make sure we meet that. Right.
Nice. Yeah.
Personally, I am trying to develop a way of talking about SRE for the startup environments, where they can easily go in, understand how to apply the principles and the thinking behind it at a much smaller scale. Google wrote the book on SRE, literally, right? Like there's a Google SRE book, and it is chock full of amazing stuff, but it's all from the perspective of this ginormous multinational uh, billion uh, multi-trillion dollars, probably maybe that's not that, it's probably millions or billions of dollars anyways.
It's big, whatever it is.
Company, yeah,
Yeah.
it's this ginormous company, and how they operate, and some of the things that they do make complete and total sense at their scale and won't make any sense for a smaller organization, because you can't afford to hire a 6-person team to focus on this one aspect of the problem, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that's what I'm trying to develop, like as my side thing. So there you
So
go.
you want to be an SRE advocate then?
Yeah, I do. I think it's a good model, and um, I think for anything that's successful and will scale large, it's one that should be considered
Mm.
in the overall life cycle of a product.
Okay.
So
Well, I think then we've got a future podcast lined up already. We could talk about SRE efficiency in smaller organizations.
yeah, I'd love that. That'd be
Yeah,
fun.
that would be cool. I think, in honesty, like a lot of the things that we've covered quite a variety of topics in such a short period of time. Um, but if you had one kind of final message that you were going to give to people that wanted to join your community, that wanted to become an SRE, that wanted to become a platform engineer, that perhaps they want to reskill, perhaps they've been made redundant or they've been laid off from something, what would your advice to those people be?
My advice, um, if you're trying, like if you need to reskill, is to take a step back and to start focusing on how to solve problems from a software engineering perspective. I would probably say, hey, um, I know a lot of leak code gets a bad rap, but go and do the leak code stuff, right? Like sit down, think through how you would solve problems with code, um, because it's very adaptable, a very scalable way to problem solve. And if you can think in those terms, even if you don't speak the right language for a particular business, if you can prove that you can think like that, it makes you immensely valuable, all the way from software developer into platform engineering and SRE. So
Yeah. Okay. I think a lot of people get put off, don't they, by the complexity or what is the perceived complexity of coming into software engineering and SRE and platform engineering. But I think if you break it down into such palatable and bite-sized kind of what's the fundamental of the job, such as what you've just said, people can relate to that. And I think, it might give some people hope to actually think they can transition into such a career. So I think that's a very good parting message, and I'm sure a lot of people will be very thankful for that advice.
good.
Yeah. So, look, Robert, it's been a pleasure. I know I've taken enough of your time already. I'm going to go and practice some of my Street Fighter because I'm useless, and the guys in the office keep whooping me. And I'm going to let you go and enjoy the rest of your day.
All right, that sounds great. Enjoy your night. We'll see you later.
It's been a pleasure. Take care.
Bye now.
Bye.